What's going on, everybody? Thank you guys so much for watching the show. Wanted to talk to you about our friends over at Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching sports. This app is really easy to use. You just pick more or less on a few player stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your cash on a single lineup. Best of all, Prize Picks will give you $50 when you play your first $5 lineup. Win or lose, you'll get $50 for playing. Use the promo code PFF and download the app now. They traded out of the first round, traded with the New York Giants as they popped to the very part of the second round for the Giants to go up and get Jackson Dart. So at the top of the second round, they took Iowa State wide receiver Jaden Higgins. And then later in the second round, they took offensive tackle Ariante Ursary. Third round, they reunited the Cyclones duo, wide receiver Jalen Knoll from Iowa State as well. And then in the third round, cornerback Jalen Smith from USC. Fourth round, Woody Marks, running back from USC as well. Sixth round, they had Jaden Reed, the safety from Penn State, and then Graham Mertz, the quarterback from Florida. And then in the seventh round, Keontae Hamilton and Luke Lachey, their two seventh-round picks there. We give the Texans a B, solid B from the PFF staff here. Your thoughts? Would you stick with the B? Would you go a little higher, lower? What do you think?
I think a B is about right because I really like their first three picks, and I'm not the biggest a fan of the rest of them. But if I'm going to like, three picks in your draft, it may as well be the first three, right? So I think, look, they needed offensive line talent, and I like that they got Ariante Ursary where they did in the second round. And look, this team, to me, they had four very clear needs. Offensive line talent. They needed help at receiver. I would have liked to have seen them take one of these run-stopping defensive tackles. Somebody like a C.J. West in the third or the fourth would have made me really happy with this class. And then a blocking tight end, maybe Luke Lachey is that guy in the seventh round coming from Iowa. So I'll cut that one some slack because that was more of a day three goal anyway. But I think the first thing you look at is Higgins and Knoll, the Iowa State pair that they got. And we don't know what the deal is with Tank Dell, obviously. Christian Kirk comes in, but that's probably only a one-year deal. Obviously Jalen Knoll maybe even competes with Kirk for snaps in the slot, but you got an immediate starter in Higgins, you got an explosive player in Knoll, you got a talented player in Ursary, and I think we're going to see a lot of open competition on this offensive line. Maybe he factors into that. So I really do like these first three picks a lot, and I like that they just said, you know what, we're going to trade down, we're going to get some value from the Giants from this pick. We're not going to force offensive line because the top three interior offensive linemen in this draft all went in the first 24 picks. So they didn't even get a chance to take one of those guys. Even if they wanted, say, Donovan Jackson there at, 25, they couldn't even get him because the Vikings took him one spot ahead. So I think it was smart to trade back instead of forcing anything. And to get these two receivers, and obviously they already played together at Iowa State for a couple of years, they're both really talented. They bring different skill sets, and I think you make C.J. Stroud's life a lot easier because one of the themes aside from the pass protection was when you watch him in that playoff game against the Chiefs, it was Nico Collins and it was nobody else, and he was the only answer. Now you've got answers. You've got Jaden Higgins. You've got Jalen Knoll who can get vertical. They brought in Christian Kirk. Eventually they'll have Tank Dell back. We'll see where that coincides with the Knoll pick here. But I think the first three picks I really, really love. The rest of it, I think Smith was an overdraft. I think Marks, I like Woody Marks as a player, but when there's guys to me like DJ Giddens and Devin Neal and even a Damian Martinez, three of my top 10 backs, I should say top 12 backs still on the board, I don't know that I would have gone Woody Marks there. And then, the weird one for me, and I know we were surprised about on draft day, I was surprised Graham Mertz got drafted after the year that he just had. But, a sixth-round pick, it is what it is if you like the guy. I just think it was surprising to see him get drafted at all after everything he went through this year.
I like this draft. I think I do. The longer that I looked at it, the more that I thought about the draft strategy here, I could go with a B+ for this one. There's a couple of reaches for sure, but they are sort of staying closer to their identity here. I think both the wide receivers are excellent. Ariante Ursary, I'm a little bit worried about in the NFL just in general, but for where they got him, I think it's fine. He's an explosive offensive tackle. That first step is great. He's great in zone blocking. Hey, he's a little inflexible. He's a little bit of a waist bender. Doesn't really have the length that you want. So there's some issues there for him that you got to work out. But hey, it's a bet along the offensive line. They made that a theme in this offseason. So I'm not going to be too hard on that one, even though I have a little bit of concerns for him. The Jalen Smith, I thought he was drafted way too early, but it's sort of like the Texans just can't help themselves to getting defensive backs that they like. I think that Jalen Reed is kind of the same thing as well. Woody Marks, you're right. There were other running backs that I had ranked ahead of him who were still on the board. But specifically for this team, I think that he could be the third down or receiving back of the future because I think that maybe you could move on from Dario Gungawale, although he is good at pass protection as well. So maybe there's some competition there. If you think that Marks brings more in the receiving game, they don't really have that back outside of Joe Mixon. As much as I love Dameon Pierce, they just don't utilize him in that role very often. So perhaps you're getting a plus in the passing game by adding Woody Marks there. The 6th and 7th round guys, I don't think will be too impactful for this team, but B plus. I can understand it. It's even though I wish maybe they would have gone a little bit of a different angle when they picked Jalen Smith and maybe even Jalen Reed, because it looks like they already had their secondary pretty much filled out. I wish that they would have gone different directions, maybe double dipped on the offensive line, something like that. It just feels like it's very much their identity. So I can't sit here and praise other teams for having great chemistry with what they want to be as a scouting staff and then a coaching staff of the types of players they want to acquire. I can't praise that for one team and then really hurt another team for such a strategy, even if I didn't love the players that they were bringing in this class with the value of where they were picked. This is just sort of what they do. So it kind of is what it is. B plus, I think, is appropriate there for the Texans. Any other thoughts on Houston before we get out of here?
Yeah, no, I just think about alternatives like Smith and Marks. If that instead was, say, Dylan Sampson and C.J. West, who were both available at that point, I think this would be an A or close to an A plus draft for me. That's the only thing, is I think those mid round picks could have been used better. But I do like their first 3 picks a lot.